Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to create surveys and questionnaires in Primed, which ultimately will be attached to workflow to send out to the individuals that maybe need to preside over processes or policies, etc. It's a very, very simple process and a very simple mechanic, but very, very powerful to get the reaches into the organization. So in Primed, you have kind of a survey creation process. And what you can do is obviously create the framework in which the survey needs to sit in. You can also actually make sure you attach certain items to the surveys if you want them to go out with things. And you can also decide on whether you want certain templates as well to be included, as in what you want to say when the survey is created and sent out as part of an email. Really simple way of connecting surveys and emails together. But this is how you create surveys. So first thing you do is create categories. So in this particular context, it's a GDPR assessment. And there are a number of 7 different categories with regards to what you want to apply your questions to. And let's just have a quick look at the getting ready category. So you create the category and then you decide on what all the questions are. And you simply just add questions, or you can copy your previous questions and just simply quickly amend it just to help expedient setup. And once you've created the question, it's only a simple case of deciding what type of answer you want the individual to respond to, because it could be a fixed format or you could give them some free text. In this particular case, you want them to give a single choice, but it could be multiple choice. So just have a look at the answers that are provided against this particular question. So you set the hierarchy out. You ask to determine the questions you want to ask, and then you determine the answers that are relevant to that particular question. So you limit, or you give them free text options. And then what you can also do is give a scoring to those questions answers as well. So it's a really, really simple way of creating a structure from category to question to answer. And as soon as you've done that, that survey is ready and is ready to attach to workflow. It's really as simple as that. What I'm going to show you now is one of the powerful elements of Primed is how quickly you can establish and upload inventory into the product. And in the context of GDPR, it could be that you're uploading all of the technologies that are relevant to GDPR. It could be that you're uploading all of the different process groups, or possibly even suppliers that you want to run some attestation across or some workflow across to determine their levels of compliance. So what I'll show you now is how quickly and how easily you can actually do this in Primed. So first thing you do is you select the upload button, and this is the relevant same pattern across all of the different elements of the product. You select the upload and you find the file you want to upload. What you can also do is you can actually download templates. So all of these things will have templates to fill in. So you might want to just say you want to fill in the information first before you upload it, or you can obviously just create it in the product itself. So in this particular context, I've actually created some items. Here's the items I've uploaded. They're just some technology items, the apps. It will show you which particular part of the business they belong to, etc. But this is just to show you how quickly you can get data into the product. So here's a version that I've actually created earlier. So that's the actual file itself. All you have to do is just find the file, and it's this particular file I need to find. You open it, you select it, you press upload, and it uploads all the data into the product. Once it's uploaded, all you need to do then is view those items in the list. And here's those items created earlier, and here's those items uploaded into the product. It's really that simple. You just create the file, you upload the file, and then what I'm going to show you next is how you can apply and load and align policies to those particular items. Okay, now this is really where Prime comes into its own. So once you've loaded your inventory in, it's really quick and very important, obviously, to establish and make sure you've got a relationship between those inventory items and the policies that they relate to. So what I'm going to show you now is how you can actually quickly establish that relationship. And it's one of the most powerful and important parts of the process, but the most powerful part of the product. So what we've done is actually, here we've got 2 different types of list views. We've got single list view, which just shows a list of all the items which you can search and filter on. But this is where you create the relationships. You create the relationships in the multi-list view. So you can find the things on the left-hand side, you can find the things on the right-hand side, and then you can just simply create a relationship. So let's just do that now. Let's have a look on the right-hand side first. Let's try and find the actual policies that we want to create a relationship with. So you select firstly the regulation, and so then you search for the different types of regulation. And this particular context, we're going to look for some GDPR policies. And because the items that I loaded in were UK items, I'm going to look for policy that's related to the UK. In this particular example, I'm going to look at the UK data consent policy. So you search for that particular policy on the right-hand side. There's that policy. And then you find the items on the left-hand side that you want to create a relationship to. So you select the left-hand box here. So we're going to go have a look at assets. And then we're going to look for types of things, characteristics about those assets. Now, there are UK assets, but you can also find out other things. For example, you might want to say, I want to look for assets that contain PI data, and it will actually filter all the assets that contain PI data. You might look for things that include or exclude encryption, etc. So for this particular instance, we're going to actually look for items or applications, and we're going to look for items that belong to the UK Demo Corporation. So if we just search for those particular items there's a Demo Corporation, and then here's the applications which we loaded in earlier. Then it's as simple as selecting all of those items, selecting the policy you want to create a relationship to, and then say create relationship. Now, that is as easy as it gets. So you load in your items, you load in your policies, you connect them, and then you've got some great views about how you can actually interrogate that information. So we created these Sankey views in the product. So here's an example of a Sankey view, which will actually show those relationships that we've made in the product here. So we'll just go into dashboards and reports. And in this particular item here, we've got a Sankey view, and it will show you all the relationships that these policies have, possibly with the framework, the policies have with the inventory items. So if we just search for that particular policy item now, it was a demo co, and I think it was a GDPR policy, and we'll search for that particular policy. It will show you the connection. And this is really important because this is really then when you start applying workflow. So in this particular instance, we've got all the different global data retention governance policies, all of the internal policies they apply to. And what I've actually done there is show you how those particular items connect to certain inventory items within the organization. It really is that simple to set up this data model in Primed, and very, very powerful. What I'm going to show you next is how you can actually start running workflow across these items. Okay, so I've shown you how to create a survey. I've shown you how to load the inventory, processes, assets, suppliers, etc. I've also shown you how you can connect policy to one or many of those inventory items. Now I'm going to quickly show you how you can set up workflow, and you can run workflow against all of those things that are connected to those policies. This is a really important part because it makes the whole process really speedy in terms of being able to gather information, in terms of being able to attest whether things are being done, etc. And this can be run against any policy in Primed. So just to let you know the type of workflow that we're going to look at now, we're going to look at a workflow which is just to validate whether somebody's happy that the information that's held against an asset is correct. So these things are called data privacy impact assessments. The viewer is going to be sent a survey. The individual who presides over that particular process is going to review the survey to see whether they're happy with the responses. And then they're going to respond and say there's an action to say the red, amber, green, or whether they want to apply any commentary or risk, which I'll show you a little bit later on how they do that in the product. So this is really simple, really effective, and I'm going to show you how you now do it in Primed. So in Primed, you can create workflow. In this particular example, we've created a workflow. In this particular, we've just called it the GDPR workflow. And there's 3 steps. Send everybody a survey who's connected to that particular asset or that policy, or those things that connect to that policy. Somebody reviews it, and somebody signs it off. And this is how easy it is. You just set up the sequence. You can also decide whether you want to send it quarterly, you can send it monthly, weekly, and the system will automatically send it. You can even decide which date you want to send it. And at the end of the process, you can decide what sort of outcomes you want to record, red, amber, or green. So just have a look at one of those steps. This is where a survey is sent. You can actually, the survey we created earlier was a GDPR assessment survey. You choose that survey. You can even load in how many days you want before somebody's reminded, and a different type of email template to prompt them to do what they need to do. And you can escalate as well. So it's really simple just to apply some very simple logic to these surveys. You can copy surveys, you can apply them to many things. You can have one type of workflow and apply them to many things. And it's a really, really easy way of setting up your system, your audit model, your attestation model, etc. for your organization. So there we go. That is effectively a workflow setup. Now let me just show you how simple it is to launch that workflow. So as previously, I was just showing you the kind of left to right view. So on the left-hand side, we're going to go and find that policy that we want to run that workflow against. So it was I believe it was the GDPR policies. So we'll look for the GDPR policies. Here's one here. Now you can select many, or in this particular instance, we'll just use the data right to be forgotten. We use the data retention policy. We'll use that one there because that was applied to all these items which we input. So there it is on the left-hand side. Then all you need to do is find the workflow on the right-hand side and run it. So these are the workflows, and there we go. There's a workflow there, and we can just find the GDPR policy there. So there's the GDPR workflow. You select that item, and you select launch. It is as simple as that. So that workflow will now be executed to all the items attached to that policy. And that's how powerful and simple Primed is in terms of setting it up and be able to manage workflow across the system. Now what I'll show you is how you can actually manage that workflow in a really simple set of dashboards and intervene where necessary. Okay, so the workflow has been executed, it's running, and now I'm going to just show you how you can track that workflow with some really simple but very effective dashboards. So it enables you to be able to intervene where things have been reminded or where things have been escalated to individuals. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm also going to show you how you can follow the instructions within the workflow and how individuals who don't need to log into Primed can actually action some of those workflows themselves, and how the individual who manages them can also add some commentary and be able to manage risk within the moment. And so all that stuff can be held centrally. So what I'll show you now is we'll go back to Primed again. So you've executed that workflow. That workflow is now up and running. It's been launched. All the things have been sent in the background. A number of emails with surveys attached and even possibly policies attached have been sent to the owners of those inventory items because you've run the workflow against a particular policy. So let's just assume that those surveys have been sent out. And what I'll do now is just show you how that looks in Primed. So effectively what will happen is an email will go out, and sometimes if you want to, you can actually attach a policy to it. So it might be you attach the data retention policy or the acquisition policy, whatever policy you want to that email, and it'll also send a survey out saying you need to attest to it or you want to gather some more information, etc. It's all the same process. So all you do is just the individual will just select the survey link at the bottom, and it will render a survey that was created in Primed. And here's the one of the examples that we've got in Primed. And it said, have you read the policy? Do you agree to the terms? You can put it in your narrative. So again, it's just multi-select. You can ask the user to apply any of the subjective text that they want to. But the user doesn't need to log into Primed to be able to action this. This will just be sent in an email. They just need access to the internet, and then they just select submit. When they select submit, their answers are automatically populated in the product. That whole stuff is centralized. It takes a lot of the heat out of the process. It's a very simple and effective way of managing attestation, DPIAs, any information gathering that you want from individuals in your organization. So all of that stuff has been sent. What will also happen if somebody presides over these processes, they'll also get the action sent to them, but that they need to deal with, sent to their my details box, and it will end up in their actions, and they can just select these items to be able to go and see what they need to do next. But what we also have in the product is an item called an action dashboard. And the action dashboard is a very, very powerful way to be able to know where things are in that process. So just to remind you, the process, the workflow we set up was just for somebody to send a survey, and then somebody needs to review it, and somebody needs to sign it off. I also showed you that you can have reminders and escalations. The reminders, those that have been reminded, or for those that have been escalated, all you do is just identify these items, select them, and it will find the action that has had the reminder or the escalation sent. It's a really neat way of intervening. But let's just go and find where it's been completed. So there's 4 here that have been completed. And this details through dashboard is one of the primary aspects of the product. So here's one that's been completed, but there's an amber outcome. So we'll have a look at the detail of that one. Now, this is really where the power of keeping everything centralized in the product comes through. So there's the 3 steps. There's the 3 individuals that completed those steps. You can identify, you can even select the survey again to go and see what the responses they've made, to see whether you're happy with it. You can also view these things in commentary as well. So there would have been some commentary between the individuals. All this stuff just acts the same way as it does on social platforms. Those things move between the people who own those items within the product. Or you may even want to raise a risk or an issue. So here's a particular risk that's been captured. So if we just view that risk there, and you've got some really standard forms in here, really neat forms, just classic characteristics of a risk, classic types. Just put the descriptions in there. There might even be a few more details entered in there as well. For example, there's some mitigation steps and what the target characteristics are. So they're moving from severe to moderate if they upgrade in the next release. So all of that stuff is being captured in the product. You can also attach documents. And again, you can just also make sure you have a running commentary. Now, the really, really neat thing about its workflow goes backwards as much as it does go forward. So if you're not happy with something, you can reject it with some commentary. It will go back to the user. They will see the email again. They will see the survey again. They may need to complete some different things. If you are happy with it, you can complete it. And then what you do is identify the outcome. So I mentioned some outcomes in the workflow earlier. You could say that it's compliant, not compliant, red, amber, green. And then that will justify where something is in the process. I'll show you how you see those things when they've all been completed in the next phase. So that's as simple as it is. You can manage workflow in the moment. You can manage all the status in the moment. It's a very, very important and very powerful part of the product. Okay, so this is the final stage. So I've shown you how to create the surveys and how you attach those surveys to your policies and then apply those policies to your inventory items. I've shown you how you then run workflow across the top of that and manage workflow in the moment to make sure all the information is centralized, to make the whole process very simple, very effective, very controlled, with great traceability and transparency about where you are in the process. Now I'm going to show you like outcomes. So this is kind of the final step in the journey, really, so you can manage the whole thing holistically and see where you are against many items. So I've shown you the action dashboards. These action dashboards are where you manage them in the process, but there's also an outcome dashboard as well. Now, I'm just going to show you what it looks like for somebody who has only a couple of policies that they preside over. So it might be that it's their responsibility to manage all the GDPR compliance items. So they would only see their policies. It's all configurable to the user and the user type. So here's the GDPR policies. And again, somebody just needs to select the items that they want to look at. So there's all the GDPR policies down here, but they may say, I just want to look at the things that are amber. And when you select the amber section of the pie chart, it will show you those items that are amber, and then you just intervene where you need to intervene. It's the same design pattern, same UI pattern throughout the product. Now, it might be that actually somebody presides over lots of policies. They want to see where something is against all the suppliers. They might want to see where something is against all the different processes. So that's a slightly different view. It's more of an aggregated view. So if we just step back into the regulation and compliance screen, here's a kind of an overall compliance status. So here where I am against all my policies. Here where I am against all the things that have been tested in my business, across the asset estate, process estate, supplier estate. And again, it's as simple as finding the items you want to look for. So you might want to look for things that sit under particular demographics or geographics or under particular policy groups, etc. You just look for those items. You look for the frameworks, you look for the policies that they belong to, and it will filter all that stuff down. And in exactly the same way, you just click on the things where you want to intervene. So you just select on the ambers or you select on the reds, and you go, I want to find a thing that is in that status, and it's exactly the same. It's a detail through the dashboards. And this is where you then find all of the issues. So in exactly the same way a survey has been sent out, you can actually look at the responses. So it's exactly the same pattern, and this could be applied to any type of policy and any type of workflow against any type of asset or any entity in your business. But it's a really simple thing to execute, a really simple thing to oversee, and a very, very powerful and a very simple way of getting this stuff sorted out. So that's it. I've shown you everything from the point of where you set this thing up to the point of where you oversee your entire policies in your organization.